Welcome, everyone. I call the October 1, 2025 Planning Commission meeting to order. The main purpose of tonight's meeting is to conduct study sessions on the Climate Action Plan Update, Findings, Commission Conclusions, and Recommendations, and the 2025 Transportation Impact Fee. Before we move on to agenda items, I'd like to acknowledge our hybrid meeting format. City of Bothell is providing the option to attend this meeting either in person or remotely via Zoom. For those participating via Zoom, the chat and question functions are not available to ensure compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act. We have a public comment agenda item at the beginning of the meeting. Please limit all comments to 3 minutes. Please note that the City of Bothell does not tolerate verbal harassment. Please remember this during your comments. Also, as we are in election season, I'd like to remind everyone of certain campaign-related restrictions regarding public comment on campaigns and/or ballot measures. Public speakers generally cannot specifically address a campaign or ballot measure at a public meeting or during the public comment period. RCW 42.17a.555 prohibits government agencies from allowing the use of public facilities either directly or indirectly for campaign purposes. Allowing speakers to speak in favor of or opposition to a ballot measure or campaign during a public meeting or public comment period would violate this prohibition. Public comment will be allowed both in person and via Zoom. Those wishing to comment via Zoom were asked to submit an online form by 3 p.m. today. People wishing to submit written comments were also asked to submit those comments by 3 p.m. Email was encouraged as well and will be acknowledged. Those in attendance may make comments and have been asked to indicate their desire to comment on the sign-in sheets. The Imagine Bothell notice, city website, and tonight's agenda all provided information to the public for providing comments. Video of this meeting will be streamed live, as well as recorded and available for later viewing on the city's YouTube channel. A call-in number was provided on the meeting agenda for members of the public who wish to call in by phone to listen live to the meeting. For our phone-in callers, during staff presentations, staff will make every effort to specify which materials they are referencing so that everyone may follow along. At this point, we will take a moment to acknowledge the attendance of the commissioners. Commissioner Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Westerbeck.
Here.
Commissioner Lever is absent and excused. Commissioner Robson.
Present.
Commissioner Sills is absent and excused. And Commissioner Gustafson.
Present.
All right. In addition, staff in attendance include Community Development Deputy Director Gates, Steve Morikawa, Deputy Public Works Director and City Engineer, Boyd Benson, Utilities and Development Services Manager, and Planner Cameron Colvin from Community Development. Lastly, before we begin, I'd like to reiterate some meeting guidelines. For all meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently. State your name each time before speaking and mute your microphone when not speaking. If you are also streaming the live video feed, please turn off the sound as there is a delay. For commissioners, at specific breaks during the presentation, I'll be calling on members who wish to speak or ask a question. If you want to speak, please indicate this by raising your hand. I will call on you as I see you. This will help avoiding the problem of having 2 people speaking at the same time. Identify yourself before you ask a question, make a motion or second a motion, or participate in debate. Please mute your microphone when not speaking. First item on the agenda is public comment. The city has accepted visitor comment in writing as well as accepted sign-up sheets for those who wish to speak at tonight's meeting. We have not received any written comments, nor is there anyone in the audience. So anyone in the Zoom room? No. Seeing none, then we'll move on from public comments and move to approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Commissioner Westerbeck, I move to approve the minutes as written.
All right. It's been moved to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the September 20 minutes. Any discussion around those minutes? Looking around the room, seeing none. All in favor of approval, signify by saying aye.
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 All right, the minutes of the September 20 meeting are approved as submitted. With that, we move to our study session on the Climate Action Plan, Findings, Conclusions, and Recommendations.
Okay, should be good to go now. Good evening, Commissioners. So I just have a relatively brief PowerPoint to run through to provide an update on some of the adjustments that were made to both the plan itself as well as the findings and conclusions based on feedback from last week. And then we will kind of open it up for discussion to finalize the written findings, conclusions, and recommendation. So a couple of updates since the last meeting. Last Saturday, we had Sustainamania. Really good turnout this year. Saw a couple of the commissioners and city council members there, which was good to see. A lot of excitement for the community development table. So we not only had information about this plan, but also our other ongoing initiatives, such as the housing action plan and downtown plans. Let's see. So I included a list of updates to the plan that were made in your packet, but just wanted to kind of pull this one out for your attention. So based on feedback, we went back through the list of actions within the plan, and within the implementation plan included a new column that identifies which actions are already baked into the city's existing programs or have secured funding, which ones may be partially funded and need additional resources on top of that, and then ones that currently don't have any existing resources available. So to provide a couple of examples of this, most of the actions that have secured funding are things like code updates or educational initiatives where we have kind of built-in staff capacity to support. Actions that may be partially secured, as an example, are like our fleet electrification. So we have an annual, maintenance and replacement budget, but additional funding may be needed for the EV charging infrastructure or the EV purchases to make those happen. And then some examples of projects that may not have current funding are new things that we've identified, such as creating like a local subsidy program for heat pumps or solar or initiatives similar to that. So identifying specific funding sources for those will be an early priority, but we are going to have to be pretty opportunistic about pursuing those. So there are a lot of resources out there. Bothell is not taking on this challenge alone. We have our K4C partnership, which regularly provides model ordinances for members to model their own code after. They often run group campaigns, so getting bulk discounts on heat pump or solar installations. And then they also frequently do educational campaigns that we're able to participate in. Another thing is there's still a lot of CCA funding out there for implementation. So although a lot of the federal programs are getting cut, there's still a large amount of state resources out there for implementation of this work. And so that'll be something that staff will be pursuing over the next couple of years. Any questions on that? Okay. So I'll transition to the findings and conclusions themselves. If there are, we can walk through these kind of slide by slide. And if there's any that need wordsmithing or anything that's missing or that needs to be added, we can do so now. So I'll just read through each of these briefly. So first finding, HB 1181 requires cities and counties fully planning under the GMA to include a climate change and resilience element in their comprehensive plans, including a GHG reduction sub-element. And so the climate action plan will help us implement those GHG reduction goals. Bothell's 2024 Climate Vulnerability Assessment found that climate change poses significant and growing risks to the community, including increased exposure to extreme heat, flooding, landslides, wildfire smoke, and other hazards that may disproportionately affect vulnerable populations. Community engagement and survey results demonstrated strong support for proactive climate action. Any changes needed on those? Okay. Next set of findings, greenhouse gas emissions in Bothell are projected to increase if no action is taken, and existing state and regional policies alone are insufficient to reduce emissions to levels necessary to avoid the most severe and costly impacts of climate change. Second one, Bothell's largest sources of greenhouse gas emissions are transportation, followed by buildings and energy use, as documented in our community-wide greenhouse gas inventory. The state of Washington, PSRC, King County, and Snohomish County all have established reduction targets for through 2050, which provide benchmarks for collective regional climate action. And then finally, some actions identified, this is the new one that was added to address funding. Some actions identified in the Climate Action Plan are already incorporated into existing programs with secured funding, while others actions will require additional resources for full implementation. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Jones.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's okay to,
Yeah.
since you're on the slide. Okay. So the text you're showing on the slides is a little bit different than the text in our packet, correct?
Yeah, I think I used abbreviations just so I could fit everything, but it should be the same.
Okay. So in terms of the bullet regarding, I guess the second bullet, Bothell's largest sources, no, sorry, the first bullet, greenhouse gas emissions are projected to increase, et cetera, et cetera. And that doesn't totally align with the Climate Action Plan. I thought that the data showed that actually Bothell's emissions had decreased despite growth increasing. However, I believe that what we're trying to do is we have a target to reduce emissions by 95% compared to the baseline of 1990. And I think there's a net zero target as well for the state. And we are expecting lots more growth. So I think it needs to be tweaked to reflect that level of accuracy. Because I think someone could look at that and say, oh, wow, our emissions have been going up. So we need to do this to lower them. We don't know how much, but we need to lower it a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I guess what I was primarily basing this off of was the K4C, projections. But you're right, in the community-wide greenhouse gas inventory, we talked about how electricity greenhouse gas emissions in particular have gone down over the past 3 years or so because of new renewable energy programs and other things that are being done. So maybe we can wordsmith that a little bit to reflect that nuance there.
And then in this might just be semantics. But in the second bullet, I know that we use buildings and energy as a subheading, just as we use transportation and land use as a subheading. But the greenhouse gas emissions that are the largest are due to energy use related to transportation and energy use related to buildings. I think when it says buildings and energy use, unless we're doing life cycle analysis and looking at the building materials, right? But I don't think we're doing what they call scope 3 emissions or something like that. Yeah, I think you might just want to take the word buildings out for this bullet, not for the headings. But
Sounds good.
Yes, Commissioner Robson.
Thank you. So would that bullet read followed by energy use? So would it read, gas emissions are transportation followed by energy use? Because that doesn't make sense.
Right, I think what it is energy use related to transportation and buildings. I think that's how it has to be rephrased.
Oh, yes, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes much more sense.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Could I ask a clarification question, if we're getting to that? Is it also the construction, or are we tying in the climate impacts from making the materials that the buildings are made of, which, gets beyond our region also? So buildings would be part of that, plus the energy use after they're built. They're two different things. Maybe you're getting at that.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and I think that was a clarification. I was asking them, are we
Okay.
including scope 3 emissions and that life cycle analysis? I don't think so. I don't think that's what the analysis was, but I would defer to staff to clarify.
Yeah, that's correct. In the community-wide greenhouse gas inventory, it does not take into account those secondary impacts such as production of materials, shipping, things like that.
Sorry, my brain goes there because of my work. They're always like, your buildings are creating so much climate. It's like, okay, I get it. But that's very clear.
So there are two bullets here that appear to need to be edited. Seems like 11 might be simplest. So we're going to say something like, Bothell's largest sources of greenhouse gas emissions are energy use related to transportation, followed by energy use related to buildings. Is that what we want to say?
Yeah, I think how it was phrased earlier would work well. Energy use associated with those two sectors.
Energy use related to transportation and buildings. Okay, because we do want to reach agreement here so we can move this on. So on the number 10 then, the one above that, the issue is that there are a lot of, and I'm looking at the chart on page 35 of the packet. So there are reductions, but they're not sufficient to meet goals without additional actions. So while greenhouse gas emissions in Bothell have reduced somewhat, if no action's taken, so. Oh, so you're not editing there, you're editing here.
Yeah, let me transfer. I'm in prisoner mode right now, but that might be easier if I just open up this to edit from. Okay, would you mind reading that one back to me?
Well, what I suggested, and certainly open to changes, while greenhouse gas emissions in Bothell have reduced somewhat, if no action is taken, existing state and regional policies alone are insufficient to reduce emissions to levels necessary. So it's not a huge edit, but I think that reflects.
Was that how you had it worded?
Commissioner Robson?
Commissioner Robson here. I don't know that we need to do that. And actually, I think it actually undercuts what we're saying, especially if we put it at the beginning of the sentence. If we put at the beginning of a sentence that greenhouse gases have emissions have decreased, that's not the point. We're starting with the opposite of what we're saying, and people don't read the whole sentence. So what I might suggest is actually just saying experts project that future emissions will increase, because then we're just kind of ignoring that part that's frankly incidental to the issue about greenhouse gases reducing in the past, blah, 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 blah. And because that's what, and we're talking about the future and strictly focusing on that. So if we get little quibbles, we're like, yeah, but we're talking about future greenhouse gases. Plus, we're removing a passive sentence, which makes me itch.
Say what you want to say, right?
Yeah, just say it. Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, going to down my path, fewer words is better. If we deleted everything before if no action, and we just said if no action is taken, existing policies alone are insufficient. How about that? Yeah? Because that says what the problem is. We need to do something.
Yeah, what are we trying to say?
Yeah, if no action,
Saying two things, what's the key idea?
yeah.
Question to staff, what targets are we trying to meet? Who's setting them?
The greenhouse gas reduction targets. It's a combination of state and our agreement as part of K4C.
Right, and we decided, based on community feedback and everything else, that we weren't going to set more ambitious targets, we were, or less ambitious targets, we were going to go
Right.
for those. That's what I think needs to come across in this, in that sentence. It's not that we're, I mean, yes, we're being proactive, but we're also meeting, we've agreed to meet these targets. And the only way we're going to meet those targets is if we take action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
I like that idea. If we do that, I think we need to split that bullet point into two ideas. If we're really hung up on the idea that our greenhouse gases, greenhouse gas emissions in Bothell are going to increase, if we want that to be like a bullet point, something we're driving home, then the next bullet point I would make is regarding state and regional policies alone are insufficient to reduce emissions, and fine-tuning that part as a second bullet to emphasize what you're talking about. I'm not 100% sure we need the first bullet, but I don't know, some people might be unclear on what we're saying in the document. So, but I feel like, well, from my perspective, that first bullet goes without saying, but upon reflection, perhaps it needs to be said.
That's not what the chart says. It,
That's the why we put the
yeah, no, but I'm looking at the report, and the report indicates that we are seeing reductions with federal, state, and regional policies. They are just not sufficient to meet the target. Is that correct?
Partially. So I don't have the chart up on the screen to share, but if you look in your packets, the black line on the black dashed line at the top of the chart is essentially if no action is taken. That is the greenhouse gas emissions that are projected out to 2050. The colored portions between that line and the pink are reductions we anticipate from implementation of existing state and regional and federal policies. And then the gray portion at the bottom is what we have to make up to reach our targets.
So again, what I'm seeing is those federal, state, and regional policies do result in reductions, but not sufficient reductions.
I was going to comment, this is Commissioner Robson. Levels necessary to avoid the most severe and costly impacts of climate change, that's debatable. I mean, not to me, but other people could easily argue that that isn't true because it's sort of arbitrary. So I think that's where we insert Commissioner Jones' part about the community's overwhelming agreement to match the community's overwhelming agreement to something. forgive me, I forgot the name of the organization we're partnering with locally. To meet the K4C targets, something along those lines that's definite as opposed to sort of squishy when we are talking about something that's an issue that's becoming more contentious.
Trying to think through how to best word that, if anyone has a suggestion.
If we don't mind losing to avoid the most severe and costly impacts of climate change, we could substitute that with to meet the
Targets.
whatever targets it is that, yeah.
Yes. Now, does that first bullet still apply based on the information you're presenting in the report?
Commissioner Robson here. That's what I was saying earlier. I think it does. I'm looking at this from the perspective of a skeptic. And in that case, yes, I think it needs to be said.
Yeah, I think it needs to be said. I think if I'm reading the chart right, I think what I hear staff saying is that if we followed, the projection is that dashed black line that continues to go up. So it's based on those projections, even though we've seen decreases in the last few years. And that's because of the anticipated growth, which the comprehensive plan supports. Yeah.
Is that what it says, though? Again, that's not how I interpret it, and if I'm wrong, that's great. But what I'm seeing is that these existing policies do have an impact of reducing, just not sufficiently. No action would be if those policies were not in place. Is that correct?
Sorry, repeat that last part again?
Well, I'm looking at the chart, and what I'm seeing is there are existing state, federal, and other policies which are reducing emissions, but not sufficiently to meet the target.
Correct. Yeah. So all of those are also projections. So, we have the past 3 years as the tangential data that we can look at to see that, okay, these programs are reducing, having an impact. And then projecting out, yes, they're projected to meet about 3/4 of the reductions needed.
So this is Commissioner Jones. It depends on what people understand by no action.
Yes.
Do we mean no action by the city? Do we mean no action by the state? Do we need, I think that's where the confusion is who's acting.
Yeah, so to make that clearer, I think what I would suggest, if no action is taken by the city, state, or regional partners.
That helps a lot because, as Cameron said, there is room for confusion there. It confused me.
And then for bullet 3, I think we had made some adjustments to that as well.
Yes, I think what we said, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that Bothell's largest sources of greenhouse gas emissions are energy use related to buildings and transportation.
This is Commissioner Jones. Yes, I think that's what we said. If we wanted to flip transportation and buildings because transportation I think was number 1 and then buildings was number 2.
Yes.
Not that anyone will know, but it might be good.
I agree.
Okay, I think I've captured that in the bullet there.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Jones, for pointing those out to us.
Okay, are we ready to move on to the next slide?
Yes.
Okay, so the next one is just the finding about SEPA review. So we have issued a determination of non-significance on the 22nd. We were hoping to have that wrapped up before tonight's meeting, but that's going to continue through October 6th in terms of any comments or appeal. We haven't received any. We don't anticipate any because this is a plan that is designed to benefit the environment. So. Yes.
Commissioner Jones.
Don't worry, I don't have a question about SEPA. I have a question for the group. As part of one of our findings, do we want to mention that success of this plan depends on community, the public, businesses, government? I mean, do we want to say something like that? Because, and I'm thinking that we don't want to give the impression that the city alone can do some things and will meet this. No, in fact, this actually requires change in behavior and those types of things.
Commissioners? Support for something like that?
We just say city.
Commissioner Robson?
Commissioner Robson, could we just say city, state, and community members?
Okay.
Okay, moving on to conclusions. So the first one, just related to process, the recommended climate action plan has been drafted, noticed, reviewed by the public, and considered by the Planning Commission in accordance with all applicable laws of the state of Washington and the city of Bothell, and requirements established by the Department of Commerce for public engagement and notification. Second one, adoption of the climate action plan is necessary to comply with the Growth Management Act and HB 1181. Third one, the climate action plan is consistent with and advances the goals and policies of the 2024 Comprehensive Plan Update, including the newly adopted climate element, and supports City Council's 2040 vision. And then finally, the greenhouse gas reduction targets set forth in the climate action plan are consistent with King County and regional partners and will help advance broader state and regional climate objectives.
Comments? Seeing none?
Okay, next one, the climate action plan was informed by public input and reflects the community's strong desire for proactive climate action with strategies that are responsive to local priorities and values. Next, the strategies and actions outlined in the climate action plan are designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions while providing additional economic, social, and environmental benefits to the community. Third, the climate action plan's success depends on the implementation of other city plans, work plans, and programs. So this kind of gets at your suggestion on the findings. Some actions have secured funding and are already incorporated into existing programs, while others will require additional funding. Council's support will be necessary to allocate resources and ensure full implementation of the plan's initiatives. And then finally, that adoption of the climate action plan is in the best interest of the public, health, safety, and welfare of the community.
Comments? I see nodding heads. You look pensive, Commissioner Jones.
Just throughout the report, I believe we refer to co-benefits when we talk about those. additional benefits. Do we want to say co-benefits there or not? It doesn't matter to me really, but I just thought I'd throw that out for consistency. I think sometimes it helps for readers when they can tie things together and they don't think you're talking about something different. And then the long one, is this where we want to also add in, actually, let me take a step back. So the climate action plan certainly depends on all of those things, including funding. Do we need additional conclusions about, that the city's going to have to continue to do broad outreach so that businesses will know what to do, so that community members will know what to do, residents, et cetera. Do we need to include that specifically? You do talk about it in the plan. There's a whole educational element that's still in there. I'm not sure that's coming out in the conclusions.
Yeah, I think that could be beneficial.
So the climate action plan success also depends on continued outreach to public and businesses to reinforce steps necessary to achieve its goals, something to that effect.
Commissioner Robson here, I think that should be a different bullet point. Those are two very different ideas.
Yeah. I was just echoing the start of the
Could you say that one more time?
The climate action plan success also depends on continued outreach to citizens in the business community to reinforce actions necessary to achieve its goals. How's that?
I don't know if I caught it all.
Don?
Yeah, we can go back and listen and get that updated.
Yeah, I think that would do it if you just said to achieve its goals. Because it's referring to the plan that's at the beginning of that sentence. Edit as well. It was off the top of my head.
Yeah, if I can be a little nitpicky, it doesn't depend on continued outreach. It depends on participation by citizens and businesses, and therefore therefore outreach is critical to meet our targets, but it doesn't rely on outreach, it relies on participation. And I think that will really drive home that we're depending on the citizens, not the city, to reach these goals.
Commissioner Jones?
I just want to support what Commissioner Robson said. I think she hit the nail on the head there. It's participation, which certainly requires the city to do its part in terms of outreach, but at the end of the day, it's going to depend, right,
So
on what we
you
do.
want to delete what he has highlighted.
Yeah, depends on participation.
Okay?
And therefore, outreach and education is a critical part of our climate action plan.
Ongoing outreach and education of the implementation. So let's say continued outreach. Okay, everyone take a look at that.
And then this is Commissioner Jones. One more suggestion is evaluation, monitoring, assessment, accountability. That whole section is really important. And I don't think we have a conclusion bullet about that. And so I would throw that out to my colleagues and say, should we have something related to that in this plan? I mean, so something like, so if you go to, let's see, where is it? It's the accountability section. of the report, which is somewhere. If you go to the accountability section, it talks about all the steps the city is going. The city identified certain metrics, key KPIs, key performance indicators for each of the categories of actions, and they set up a. I believe they're going to have reporting to city council on a regular basis. They have a number of different aspects related to monitoring and evaluation, et cetera. And that is going to be key, I think, in terms of, especially given what we're talking about. We're talking about multiple actions over numerous years by multiple people. Someone's going to have to be sort of spearheading that. And it might be good to remind folks of that.
Also critical is
Could say like I mean, going with the same theme, the climate action plan success depends on
Cameron, please give.
on camera. Keep his job.
We're talking about continued monitoring. There it is.
Does something like that work? Climate action plan depends on continued monitoring by city staff to ensure progress and accountability.
I think that looks good, and I think it's simple and works well. One point about the plan, which I guess I missed when we looked at it, and I may just be interpreting it incorrectly. Throughout the report, I believe there are 5 categories of actions, like we said, buildings and energy, transportation, land use, et cetera. I think the first one was municipal, but I don't think there are any KPIs for municipal in that section. That would be page, 56, I think. And so I'm not sure if you want to, not to address as part of the findings, but if you want to go back and just make sure that there's something there. I think it's probably what's referred to in the first sort of set of paragraphs before you get to buildings and energy, et cetera, but it doesn't specifically point out KPIs.
Gotcha. Yeah, we'll go back and take a look at that, and if there are none, we'll make sure those are added.
And then related to that, as you're looking at it, none of the KPIs address equity or vulnerability in terms of the data that's reported. And, you know, this is the first climate action plan for the city. It can't include everything. And I think there's a nice statement in there that says that, you know, these are sort of a preliminary set of KPIs, but you're going to continue to look at them. You might want to put something in there because as you gain experience with it, then you'll probably know how best to do that moving forward, to look for things like vulnerability, equity.
Somewhat along those lines, on that last conclusion added about continued monitoring, should we add something that, you know, and based on this monitoring, and don't start typing it yet, but I mean, there will likely need to be modifications in the future. Should we recognize that?
Commissioner Jones, I think that's a great point. I think it would be good to include that in the conclusions.
I think, yeah, and I think that's the place to do it. You're going to collect data, you're going to monitor the effectiveness, and make adjustments as appropriate. As needed, as indicated by this. Yeah, simple is good. Just
I was just trying to think how to maybe just tie up the end of that based on ongoing GHG data or to ensure that progress toward our GHG reduction goals are being met, something along those lines.
Yeah? To ensure, yeah, continued progress towards the adopted goals. How's that sit? We good? Okay. And then there's the recommendation. Commissioner Jones?
Sorry. So I'm going to go back to something that I said way back when we started this project in January. And I totally understand why this is done this way because of the type of funding that you got to support the development of the climate action plan. But this is a greenhouse gas reduction plan, right? Which is okay. I mean, it's okay to call it a climate action plan, but this is about greenhouse gas reduction. It's not about adaptation and it's not about resilience. There are some co-benefits that relate to adaptation and resilience, but there wasn't enough time or funding to actually develop an adaptation plan and a resiliency plan. So should the recommendation also include, something related to seek grant funding or other resources to develop a comprehensive adaptation and resiliency plan? So something like that. I don't know if the group is supportive of that, but I think it is the next step as part of, say, the next version of this climate action plan. Climate Action Plan 2.0.
Commissioners?
Commissioner Westerbeck here, I'd endorse that additional point for the draft recommendation.
Do we want to leave it like that or add something at the end to build upon this plan or something like that?
This is Commissioner Jones. From a policy standpoint, since this is going to City Council, would it be better for it to be 2 recommendations because maybe they don't want to go with one of them, and so it makes it easier for them to nix one?
Good point. The commission also recommends.
Commissioner Robson here. I wouldn't put down additional grant funding or resources, because grant funding is a resource. So you can just put down resources. Yeah. I'm sorry. We're not pursuing. We're pursuing in the near future resources, or these. It's underlined itself. It's because
It doesn't like something.
yeah, it's that
additional comments, thoughts? Commissioner Gustafson.
Hi, Sarah Gustafson here. First of all, big thank you to everyone for your thoughtfulness here. I was so struck by Commissioner Jones' urgency in describing that what we have before us is generally related to greenhouse emissions and that a piece is missing. And I would love to see this language punch in some of that urgency here, because otherwise it seems like climate action plans should include adaptation and resilience. So we might want to say, since this plan mainly focuses on greenhouse gas reductions, we believe it's imperative that future work looks forward to the next step, which is adaptation and resilience. Just a thought.
Commissioner Robson.
Thank you. I agree that removing that phrase did reduce some of the urgency. We might just want to put down also recommends promptly pursuing resources to develop a comprehensive. It is not as nuanced as Commissioner Gustafson's suggestions were, but it's an option.
Further discussion, Commissioner Jones?
It's Commissioner Jones. I appreciate Commissioner Gustafson's points and Commissioner Robson's suggested change. I'm supportive of Commissioner Robson's change because what I don't want to do is diminish the work that has happened over the past year. And I don't want to put any doubt in City Council's mind or the public that might be attending the meeting. At the same time, I do think it's extremely important for there to be a thorough adaptation and resilience plan. I think it's very fortunate that the work that the team has done over the past year, while it was focused on greenhouse gas emissions, you were able to find ways to incorporate some adaptation throughout. I think the team should be complimented for that. It wasn't the team's fault because it just had to do with the way the grant funding worked. So if there's a way to somehow balance the urgency with without causing a problem for this particular version of the plan, then I'm totally in favor of that.
Well, the first recommendation does recommend we proceed with this plan. You know, we reviewed the findings say we reviewed the plan, the conclusions talk about our findings, and then we recommend adopt the plan. So I think that gets what we want, correct?
Just as a potential suggestion, maybe we could just add at the beginning as a next step.
Thoughts?
This is Commissioner Jones. I think you'd have to take, if you decide to go in this route, I think you'll have to take the word also out, probably.
Yes.
Good catch.
And I would ask the staff, do you think this is the next step? If you think this is the next step, because there are many steps in this plan, then this looks good to me.
Yeah, I mean, based on our work over the past year and looking at other cities' climate action plans, as mentioned, the grant funding was very focused on building upon our greenhouse gas sub-element and making sure that, we're in good standing to comply with HB 1181 moving forward. But this is definitely the next step in my opinion.
This is Commissioner Jones, and I think staff is aware of this, but it will require a new set of surveys and things like that, because even though the folks who responded to surveys mentioned some things that could fall into the category of adaptation, they weren't asked specifically about that. And so it will require a pretty thorough process, similar to what you went through for this.
Okay, is there further discussion around the findings, conclusions, and recommendations? I think the next step here, as opposed to with the plan, is there a motion to adopt these findings, conclusions, and recommendations?
Motion to adopt these findings.
Okay, Commissioner Robson moves to adopt. Is there a second?
Commissioner Jones, second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we adopt these findings, conclusions, and recommendations as edited this evening. Is there any further discussion around this document? Seeing none, all in favor of adopting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, all present voted aye. I want to thank staff for lots of hard work on this extremely important topic. I want to also thank the City Council for supporting your work in this and providing the resources necessary to do this. I look forward to seeing the progress as we proceed and the next steps we take on this path. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just got to say, a really substantial first plan. I think it's pretty rare to be given something in, what, a year and a half, 2 years later, have such a robust plan. So again, kudos.
Yeah, echo that. Really great job.
If I may, since this is the last time Cameron will be before Planning Commission with the Climate Action Plan in this form, I just wanted to say, he's done such a great job on this. The help from Emily Nielsen, our former Civic Spark, will carry this forward. We'll carry this recommendation forward to City Council, and yeah, we look forward to being back through the many, many years to come of implementation of this. But Cameron did an awesome job on this.
Thank you very much. And one thing I forgot to mention earlier, we do have a new CiviSpark fellow starting next week, I believe, who's going to be helping get a lot of the EV and charging infrastructure stuff off the ground. So we're excited to have her on board and introduce her in a couple of weeks.
Great, good news, thank you. All right. After that substantial piece of work, the next item before us is the 2025 Transportation Impact Fee Study. And there'll be a change at the table. Sure, let's just take a 2-minute break while you pull up your slides and prepare, and I'll grab a quick drink of water too. All right, we all set? All right. Who's lead here? We're back at the October 1 Planning Commission meeting for our next study session item on the transportation impact fee. So take it away.
Will do. Good evening, Planning Commission. Boyd Benson, Utilities and Development Services Manager. Tonight with us we have City Engineer Steve Murakawa and Carmen Kwan from Fair and Piers. And I am going to share this screen. There you go. Come on. There we go. Tonight we'll be asking you to receive some information about the 2025 Transportation Impact Fee Update. We were back with you a few months ago, and tonight, when we talked to you, we're requesting that you provide input on impact fee affordability reductions and a change in use exemption. We're presenting this information to support the fee schedule update itself, to implement the multimodal and policies that were adopted as part of the 2024, thank you, comprehensive plan. This is the input we're seeking from Planning Commission tonight. Should Bothell implement a lower or higher transportation impact fee reduction for affordable housing? And should Bothell implement a transportation impact exemption for minor change in use? And we'll be going into more detail on each of these in a few moments. So first, this is where we're at. We last completed a major update in 2019, and then in 2023 did a minor update for middle housing check. We came back in May to speak to Planning Commission, in July to speak to City Council. We're presenting preliminary results tonight, and the goal of this meeting is to get your input and then bring forth the draft results to City Council with the findings, facts, and conclusions from Planning Commission. We'll then have a public hearing and adoption in December as planned, and then these rates will go into effect January 1, 2026.
So what are transportation impact fees? They're methods of paying for infrastructure needed to accommodate growth and meet the city's transportation concurrency standards. So they are one-time fees paid by new development. They are to provide system-wide capacity-related projects to mitigate impacts from growth. The fees paid by development must be proportional to growth-related impacts, and they can only be used for projects identified as part of the transportation impact fee study.
And what's new with this one is that with this plan, we'll be able to look at funding non-motorized improvements as well. So that will fully implement the vision for separated bike lanes and pedestrian paths. These type of expenditures were previously not allowed as part of these type of updates. So this is a very brief overview of how we calculate fees. We generate a project list. The project list originated with a 2024 comp plan project list. We looked for eligible projects that actually provided capacity for growth. We identified that growth share. We get the total cost from all those projects, and then we can divide by the number of trips within that 12-year planning period. That gives us our cost per person trip. We're now discussing reductions, and once we get through this process, we'll develop an impact fee schedule. And when you see that, when this is all completed, it'll look very similar to what we have now. And you don't see the number of trips on the schedule, you see residential units or square feet of commercial, the rest. So we did include a copy of the draft impact fee eligible project list. There's 24 projects, $370 million in total cost. We are showing grant revenue, and I'll talk about that a bit more. But from this evaluation, we have about $99 million in eligible costs. And if you divide that by the anticipated number of trips, our per trip fee is about $9,900 per person trip. The reason we're looking at the grants more closely is we're tasked to charge a fair fee. And you can look at it two ways. Grants they're not a for sure thing. So we could charge the entire project and the fee would go up and get the grant share or get the development share from that, or we can give it our best estimate of how much grant revenue will come in, and it results in a relatively lower fee. So for the 2024 comprehensive plan list, that's a 20-year horizon. There's a lot of long-term planning for that on the cost of projects. So as part of this, when we looked at these 24 projects, we really dialed in what percentages of these projects could we conservatively receive from grants. So it's slightly less. The grant share is slightly less than we had in 2024. It's a different climate right now with respect to grants, but we still think this is a defensible number.
So the last time we met, there was discussion about potential impact fee reductions for certain areas of the city where we want to encourage growth and where travel may be different than other areas of the city. The focus was within a quarter mile of frequent transit and near growth centers. So the proposed reduction area is shown on the map on the right, shaded in blue, and that covers Canyon Park Regional Growth Center, Midtown, downtown, and then within a quarter mile of frequent transit. We looked at a PSRC household travel survey and identified in more dense areas near frequent transit, there's about a 10% reduction in vehicle trips to less impactful travel. So that's transit, walk, or bike. In this instance, we're proposing a 10% fee reduction within this area, and we estimated based on projected comp plan growth for the city and looking at these specific areas, that would be about a $5.9 million revenue reduction.
And we had strong enough input from both the Planning Commission and Council that this was a good idea, that it's basically our base approach right now. We had additional comment from City Council about simplifying the area to make this as simple as possible. There are questions, can we make the area larger? And so what we've done, well, what Fair and Piers has assisted the city in completing is a slightly expanded area from the quarter mile to simplify it so it's easy to understand, and then including those growth centers. So we think this is a pretty defensible approach. And like we said, the baseline that could be charged is about 99 million, and this is not a significant decrease in that revenue. So it acts as a baseline for the next two alternatives.
Using our draft impact fee rate, we have shown on the screen here what the impact fee could be for a single family home. So we show Bothell here, there's three values shown. 2025 value today of about $12,000. The proposed fee in 2026 is about 11% increase to about $13,000. And then if you're in a reduction area, you get 10% off of that, and that'd be about $12,000. So fairly similar to today's rate. We also have a comparison here for a multifamily unit. Today's fee is about $5,800 per unit in 2025. A fee for a multi-story multifamily unit in 2026 would be slightly less, at about $5,400. And then you could see another 10% reduction if you're in that reduction area to $4,900.
Okay, so this is the first of two key items of input we'd like to receive from the Planning Commission. And it's, would you recommend implementing a lower or higher transportation impact fee reduction for affordable housing? So there's a lot of information on these slides, but staff evaluated the lower reduction, and this will take a minute or two. But we looked at a 10% reduction for 50 to 80% of AMI, average monthly income based on the county in which you reside. A 30% reduction for 30 to 50% AMI, and then a 50% reduction for less than 30 AMI, our most aggressive incentive. And we put the multifamily tax exemption. Our calculations also include the understanding that with current RCW requirements, if you apply for the multifamily tax exemption, you get a 50% reduction impact fee. So we're kind of lumping it into that 30% AMI. So what does this mean for net revenue? It removes about another $9.6 million out of the pie. So we're down to $83 million. But what we'd like to really show is what does this mean for residential uses? So we're showing single family attached, more like townhomes, and multifamily apartment. Our full rate, 73.41 for single family attached, and if you get down to the most aggressive, 30% AMI and less, it's 36.71. So it's a significant savings, it's half. And the same with multifamily apartment. Full rate of 54.70, 0 to 30, 27.35. So that's a significant savings. Now, when you look at the cost to construct these units, they're very expensive. This is a savings. It'll help promote this type of growth, but still there's other considerations. It costs quite a bit to construct some of these type of facilities. Now, when you look at the higher reduction, it's a much more aggressive reduction. We can go up to 80% reductions without having to pay back the impact fees from another source like the general fund, so we capped it at that. 20% reduction for 50 to 80% AMI, 50% for 30 to 50, or multifamily tax exemption, and an 80% reduction for the most affordable 30% AMI. And this results in a much greater savings when you look at the two single-family attached multifamily apartment. I mean, it's a very small number at the end. What does this mean for net revenue? We are now down from 99 million to 77 million. With that said, for both these options, when you look at the 20-year plan, which estimated on the order of 100 million minimum for TIF impact, transportation impact fees, we believe that either of these two approaches will provide enough revenue to complete the projects. And that's the important takeaway for this first piece of input. This might be a good time for us to take a pause and see what your thoughts are. Or we can go through the rest of the presentation. There's 3 more slides, whatever you'd like.
Oh, commissioners, questions, clarifying questions? Commissioner Jones?
Commissioner Jones, this is great analysis. I just have one quick question, which is, if you look at maybe the most aggressive changes in terms of the reduced amounts coming from impact fees, it looks like it's anywhere about between like $23 or $24 million less than what you were initially projecting you would get from impact fees for the projects, 24 projects. Where's that difference coming from if you said it's not going to make it, if it's fine? Basically that's.
It's a good question. I'll give it a shot, and Steve can always support me on this. But, and in your packet, you'll see that the 2024 full 20-year plan list, the 850 million, estimated 100 million in impact fees. That's over a 20-year period. Right now, this is a 12-year time frame, and we're showing, even with this lower result, we get 77 million of that 100. So when you do the math, we're on target. And it gets kind of messy because the numbers are very similar. We talk about 100 million, 99 million that goes down, then you look at the 20-year plan, and it's actually 97 million we're estimating. The estimates for the 2024 plan were based on historic revenue up to that point. We're at a point now with middle housing and the rest of this growth, we don't exactly know how it's going to proceed. But with 77 million out of that 100 million in the first 12 out of the 20 years, we feel pretty confident. And I had this later on in these slides, but I'm just going to say it now. When we look at the estimates and the projects, it's all depending on growth. If you think about it, if all the growth magically happened tomorrow, we'd have a bunch of revenue and we'd have to do all these mitigation projects to mitigate them. It's not realistic, right? If none of the growth occurs in the next 20 years, which isn't realistic either, we're not collecting impact fee. We're not completing those mitigation projects to mitigate the impacts. So it really is, this is defensible, it's good math, but we typically look at impact fees every 5 years in a really detailed way. We'll be looking more detailed in the next 3 years on this because we want to make sure that the growth could come faster than anticipated. It could come slower. The projects could come sooner or later. And so this is more of a holistic approach to fees, and it's a 12-year period. But the key takeaway when you see these numbers is we'll be looking at these very closely. And if revenue is not occurring, if growth in revenue is not occurring at the rate that's anticipated, or projects aren't being completed at the rate that's anticipated or deferred, we'll definitely be addressing that in the future. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you very much. It totally makes sense. And just one other question. It wasn't addressed in the report. It doesn't need to be addressed in the report, but we hear all these rumors that tariffs, et cetera, are going to lead to increased cost for construction materials and et cetera, et cetera. I know it's probably hard to estimate, but is that factored into your capital budget at all, or was this done pre-tariff world?
I'm going to say something and I'm going to ask Steve to chime in. So these are based on the 2024 estimates. There have been some slight changes, like with the Bothell multi-way project. Bothell multimodal widening project. But that factor is not directly in there. Now, what we did do is there is a change in the grant environment, so we did reduce that grant revenue. And we do look at these costs very closely. So as the projects come in, we'll have a better understanding of the costs, and every time we update this, we refine the math a bit. Steve, anything do you want to add to that?
So when we do planning, we do kind of like a snapshot. For all the information you have at that point in time, you do as best you can. And remember, when we did the comprehensive plan, it was 2024, so nobody knew what 2025 was going to look like. So the plan itself is optimistic. The funding is optimistic and aggressive. Bothell has traditionally been very aggressive on grant funding. We're not sure what it's going to be in the future. I mean, next 3 years look a little difficult, but we don't know what it's going to be over the next 9 years after that. That's why Boyd said we're going to have to really monitor this. I will say I'd rather have an optimistic plan than a not so optimistic plan, because it gives you more opportunities. If you put less projects in your plan and you have an opportunity for one of those projects and it's not listed there, you lose an opportunity. So I always think it's better to be optimistic, and then we adjust in the future if we have to adjust based on what happens.
Commissioner Gustafson?
Hi, Sarah Gustafson here. Thank you for this really interesting discussion. And I give kudos to Bothell for thinking creatively about that 10% reduction. I, like Commissioner Jones, am also concerned about losing that revenue, partly because of inflation and also because there are so many great projects on that list. And there are some that have been deprioritized that I know are could have so much benefit for the city. With that said, my question is, if we are reducing by 10% the impact fees in places that have 10% better use of transit, is it possible to raise the impact fees by 10% in the areas that perhaps do not use transit so efficiently? So we're working the incentives both ways. I wonder if there are any thoughts on the possibility of doing so.
That's a very good question, and some jurisdictions choose to go that way. Because if you can demonstrate there's a reduction in trips in an area, then that math changes. The numerator at the top, the total cost divided by the number of trips. The number of trips decreases because you're saying it's being shifted to transit, then the total cost per trip increases. Now, we looked at this, and you can go that way, but did that make sense? Like, this is a really good question.
I think so.
It's a really good question, because we've had this discussion over the last month or so. So when you look at this, this math, it's 99 million divided by 9,984 trips. Now, if you were to say, we know for sure that a portion of those trips can go to transit, right? You could reduce that 9,984 by a small number, and that would increase the trip cost, the standard trip cost. Okay, so you're keeping the top the same, you're decreasing the bottom, so the net comes out. With that said, it's as Carmen stated, we're thinking that trips in these areas are going to generate less intensive uses elsewhere in the city. It's kind of hard to say it's a direct correlation to lose trips to transit. So we looked at both ways. If you say that some trips are shifted to transit, you lower that denominator, the 9984, the trip rate goes up, but it's harder to defend than the approach we're recommending here. Hopefully that makes sense. Steve or Carmen, do you want to chime in? Or no? Yeah, so we're keying more on, we believe that uses within that quarter mile will have less impactful. Will have less impact on the transportation system, so there's slightly less to mitigate, and so they should be charged a slightly lower fee. But your question is valid, and it's good.
I guess I would also say that, things are very interrelated. So if we start charging more for our transportation impact fees, sometimes that can affect development. And if you don't get that much development, then you're not going to get any fee for that. So we don't know how this is going to play out. Again, this is kind of a snapshot and a recommendation based on what we see and what we have planned in 2024. One of the things we think is some of these things are policy decisions on what the city values. If we want to get more housing, how can we get more housing? And this is one way we could get more housing is, 10% reduction in areas which are well supported by, we have good infrastructure because we have transit service in those areas. Those areas typically have better sidewalks already. So that's a kind of a cost savings for us. The rest of the city, probably a little bit more. But if we start trading where that TIF is going to be, you may not see some of the action in the rest of the city. And remember, we're looking at things at middle housing. We've increased density in areas outside of downtown and our growth center. And we don't know how that's going to play out. So again, this is our best shot at it. We would recommend that we really look at this again in 3 to 5 years to see how well all of Christian's team's planning has played out, what's actually occurring, and how the transportation associated with that is. And, that will help us a lot, I think.
Sarah Gustafson here. I think that makes sense. From what I understand, we're saying that the reduction in fees received in the transit dense areas are not actually going to hit the budget as much because the costs will be lowered. So the reduction is almost paying for itself in some way. And then the second thing that I'm understanding is that perhaps by changing the math here, by removing those trips, it's almost as if we are already shifting some more of the cost to the places that are not in those areas. Not quite so sure about the second point, but I think I see the logic here and I agree with it.
Yeah, and I like the way you said your second point. The first one, I'd like to tweak a little bit in your mind, but the second one is for sure, we're using the PSRC data to understand where people go in this area, and more people use transit, and the transit's there. So their impact on the rest of the transportation is less, so it's a slightly reduced fee. So I really like your second summary. That's a good, and this is, I'm very impressed you brought this up because, like I said, we were going back and forth on this just a month and a half ago.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Commissioner Westerbeck.
Commissioner Westerbeck here. This is great information. And so first of all, Commissioner Gustafson brought up something that I think I brought up here and thought about for years, which was, and we're starting to get at it here, how do we sort of incentivize or de-incentivize growth that's not helping us hit our housing goals. So I've long thought about how do we, if for example, now we can have 4 units per lot pretty much anywhere in the city, and we have developers who are coming in and saying we're just going to put one big house here. I know we already have the higher fees and everything, but if we're saying you could do 4 and you're only doing 1 and it's going to cost $2 million, and when you could be doing units it costs 1 or something like that. Sort of related to what Commissioner Gustafson said, should they have an increase? I mean, we're not doing a minimum density in some of those areas, so it's a way of saying you could be doing 4 or 2 or 3, but you're only doing 1. You're going to take a lot of resources, and you're not going to help us hit our affordable housing goals, which are really ambitious. We all know from the required numbers we have to hit. So I think Kenmore, and I don't actually love everything they've been proposing, but they propose something like this with the single family homes where there could be more units, will have a higher impact fee. And this is outside the area for the 10% reduction. So just something to think about there. do we raise them in areas where they could have a higher density and they're not meeting that density? And we're saying you could have 2 or 3 or 4. And then I tend to think that the 20/50/80, the higher reduction, is probably worth the trade-off, because again, I'm thinking about those crazy numbers. They stick in my head all the time. The numbers Deputy Director Geitz shared with us that's in our comp plan and everything about how many 80% under units we need in the next 40 years. That just almost haunts me to think we need like 3 6 oaks built per year of lower. I mean, right now I don't even know how we're ever going to attain that. You know, it's just where I think it's 2 per year, something like that. Just these huge numbers. So these are sort of little, you know, nibbling at the edges, sort of with middle housing and stuff like that. But it is important. It does add numbers. So I tend to think at 10%, you hardly get my attention as someone who does develop property. 20, 50, 80, now we're talking, you know, I think you start to do something significant there. And if it's not going to hurt us too much, then I think it's a lot more impactful than the lower rate. And I also think about what, is it long range planner or senior planner Sosa? I apologize, I can't recall. He was sharing with us about how we've had incentives for inclusionary zoning in parts of the city for years, and no one's taken us up on it. So this is sort of another form of that in a way, to kind of incentivize development. So if we can handle that 23 million less, I would lean towards the more aggressive, higher reduction, and then maybe even thinking about disincentivizing some of the larger homes where they could be building more units but aren't.
And just to comment, those are all good points. And I will say, as Carmen mentioned, we have to develop these rates based on a defensible study. Yeah. So quite often we'll see policy direction to try to reduce rates and promote growth or decrease the burden. And most people don't challenge those. If you're to say you're going to disincentivize a certain use and charge more, it would open up the city most likely to a challenge. So I hear where you're coming from, and it makes good sense.
And I hear that. I know it's controversial.
I just wanted to let you know,
there.
because everything you said makes great
Yeah.
sense. I'm just telling you right now that
And I
staff
think
probably would recommend that.
As a city, we've been going in the right direction in that we you use more land for a smaller, home relative to that property. We do have the impact fees reflect that, so that's good. I'm just saying, over time, I hope we're considering little bumps in that, and maybe that's something we can be building into those every 5-year visits in a more subtle way that reflects the climate plan and the tree canopy plan, all the things we're working on right now. I think they all overlap and impact each other. So, and I know our development regulations now and our zoning very much encourages, please use the land as effectively as you can. And so it's just within that ethos. But I totally understand it's not fun to get litigation landed on the city.
I think from a policy standpoint, I would support what you're trying to do. I think it's difficult to defend from an impact standpoint. And that's where I think you'd run into problems. So you'd need to find another way to do it other than calling it an impact fee. Because it's hard to say that 4 has less of an impact than 1, even if that 1 is not using the land efficiently.
It's a good point. Yep.
I do want to agree though with going with the more aggressive route. In the report you presented, I remember just as I got to that sentence, I went, oh my goodness. The sentence says, however, recent development proposals include few, if any, affordable units. And so I think we have to be more aggressive assuming that we're still going to be able, based on your best projections and best assumptions, if we're still able to get those 24 projects moving over the next X number of years. If you feel confident that we're going to be okay financially, then I say go with the more aggressive route.
So we've been seeking clarification on this. If everyone is comfortable with what we've heard, do you want to take a vote on the actual proposal to go with the lower? There'd be a motion to support the lower fee? The higher fee, I'm sorry.
And do
The
you
higher
want that now,
reduction.
or
Higher reduction.
The higher
would you guys
reduction.
Prefer, Commissioner Westerbeck here, prefer that input now or after you're done with your presentation?
You know, that's,
All at
I'm gonna leave
once.
that up to you folks, because I think we have to actually come back with a draft findings, conclusions, and recommendations. I get the words in the wrong order. So we will plan to stick that, you know,
Let me.
so I don't know how that works.
Let me rephrase that then. So you're seeking input, and I think you're hearing, and please chime in, commissioners, I think you're hearing general support to incentivize that affordable housing, to pursue the fee schedule that incentivizes that development. So, you get head nodding there.
Yeah.
So you don't get a vote, you get heads nodding.
Sounded like unanimous support, unanimous support.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
cool.
Subtle.
I like that. Okay, now, one more. Change in use exemptions, and this is for minor development. We were asked by city council, this was after we came to present to you back in May, to investigate fee exemption for minor change in use. And this came about because of a few projects in downtown where someone would like to change the use. They weren't removing the building, but because of how our fee system was developed and codified, we'd have to charge the same fee basically as if you took the building out and put a new building in, because it's the difference in trip generation. So planning or city council asked us to look into that. We started looking at different jurisdictions. We found a few good examples of this, and the best one we found is the city of Kirkland, and that's where we're kind of hanging our hat on. So the city of Kirkland, their code basically exempts minor changes in use, and we haven't fully fleshed out the definition of minor, for projects that don't alter the structure that they're within. And if you provide an addition or anything else and expand the structure, you'd pay increased fees based on that addition. And so we looked at estimates, what would this really mean to the city of Bothell? In the last 6-7 years, we've had 2 of these come in with these requests for more change in use. You may have recalled there was one that wanted to convert to a pizza and pinball place. And at that time, we tried to get the fee as low as possible within existing code, and now council's asked, can that be exempt? And we think there's the basis for exempting that type of work. So we've estimated about 2 of those every 12 years, or 1 every 3 years, sorry, at about $300,000 a piece, so $1.2 million. And then what we're more excited about this that came up after the meeting with council is wait a second, we're trying to promote neighborhood scale commercial. Someone turns their garage into a corner store or a green grocer. And under our current impact fee approach, they'd be paying a significant increase. Under this type of program, they'd be exempt. Once again, this is not someone taking out a garage and putting in a Trader Joe's or demolishing, a building on Main Street and putting in an apartment. That's not what this is intended for. And so that's what we're looking at. So we're looking at a total of about 1.6 million potential lost revenue within the next 12 years. And then when you look at these 2 pie charts, that gets us down anywhere from 81.9 to 75.8 million for the 12-year period. And once again, really do appreciate what you're stating about making sure we get enough revenue. And once again, if we were estimating, I'm just going to say 100 million over 20 years, that's 60 million over 12 years. And that exceeds that estimate, which we're very comfortable with. And once again, the city could choose to charge the entire amount of growth eligible costs and not have any of these reductions. And what we'd look at then is instead of the, what was it, minus 11 to the plus 7% increase, it'd be an 80% increase across the board. And based on input from Planning Commission and Council, there's no real appetite for this. We think this is a fair rate. We think it provides the revenue required to do the work. And the next question on the table for you folks, or do you support a change of use exemption as described?
Commissioner Westerbeck.
So thank you. I'm super excited about this because I've been hoping for this for 10 years. It's great. I think it's about so much more than money. Around 2017, some of you probably remember Steve was here for this. There was the Bothell Furniture was moving, and we ended up with another furniture store because there was going to be a $390,000 traffic impact fee because they wanted to put it in a blues club, and people were really excited about it. There was a lot of enthusiasm about that, and then there was a lot of disappointment when the city said, "Well, we can go down to 290 or whatever within the code, but we can't get you down to 0." And then that happened again with the place I think you're talking about, where they wanted to do the chiropractic downstairs and the pizza and pinball upstairs at the old Bank of Bargains building over here. So I know in my informal conversations with council, they've been really frustrated about losing that opportunity. So that's why I say it's more than money. We're losing building a viable, money generating, tax revenue generating downtown, and just creating a place that people love. People love downtown Bothell, but they even want more downtown Bothell. And so we're just like literally shooting ourselves in the foot by saying, "Great, we'd love you to do that, but $400,000. I mean, that just kills it, man, like that, but they can't even get it off the paper. So this is super exciting, and I agree, extending it to neighborhood commercial and things like things we really want to foster and encourage and incentivize. This is just, to me, a no-brainer. And I know that we have fewer receipts, and hopefully they aren't too often. This doesn't happen too often. Well, maybe I do hope it happens often, because if we, make downtown amazing with all our existing old buildings by getting these businesses in there, we're really juicing our future downtown and the community, and creating things people are saying they want, and they're disappointed when they don't get. So I could not be more enthusiastic about this. I think this is a really important move, and I hope it bears some fruit if we do pass it.
Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, just ditto. And I don't think it's limited to the downtown, because as you mentioned in the report and in the presentation, the neighborhood commercial, this just aligns completely with what we're trying to do. And so this one seems extremely easy in terms of support. Related to this and the other issue that we were just looking at, and the fact that you're going to come back to us with findings and recommendations, conclusions, all of that, I think it is important to document in the findings and conclusions some of the responses to some of the questions that we're asking, because it's all about transparency for the public. So for example, the previous issue, I mean, it may not seem obvious to most people how you can meet a $25 million difference, but when you explained it, totally makes sense, because you put it within the context of a number of years that you're actually looking at in terms of this impact fee. So anything you can do to try to provide that level of transparency in that document that you're going to come back to us with would be great.
Other commissioners?
Chair Kiernan, can I just pipe in real quick from the back row? I do want to make sure that it's very clear that while exempting out impact fees is a great thing, there are still real changes to a building, to a structure, that don't get waived, such as converting it from a retail to a restaurant. There's a lot of costs that can sometimes come into that, and those can be equally as daunting at times. But just to make sure that that's clear. Yeah.
And I never made that point, but I'm really glad you brought it up, Christian, because I do this with clients all the time. I've got a couple of them right now, or change of use in other cities. And they are working, these often solo, small entrepreneurs are just doing everything they can just to pay for the commercial kitchen, the signage, the plumbing upgrades, the energy, the HVAC, because there's, like you say, substantial requirements just because of the state code and so forth. So to have the transportation fee just kind of tacked on, it's just like it's the straw that breaks the camel's back. So we're just giving them a huge assist by saying that $400,000, that'll build a commercial kitchen in a lot of places. So suddenly they've got the money to do that instead, and they're like, oh, I can make a run at this maybe. So I appreciate that point though, because it's really important.
Other commissioners? So again, again, reading the room, I think you're seeing a consensus supporting proceeding with this and coming back to us with findings that are a little more fleshed out. But I do think it's really useful to allow more creativity in the use of these existing spaces and removing some of the barriers to that creativity. So thank you for bringing this to us. Any closing comments from anyone? Commissioner Gustafson.
Hi, Sarah Gustafson here. Thank you. I agree for all the reasons mentioned about building a better downtown, about creating a vibrant financial environment. I do want to mention that some of the discussions about reusing old buildings we've had in the years, like 6 years going back to the years of David Van Vliet, and this was his favorite thing to talk about. Because when we reuse the old buildings, it can potentially be better for the environment, and it can also, in some ways, preserve some of the old Bothell that is so exciting when it's mixed together with the new Bothell, and that sometimes people miss. And I wonder if we are valuing that enough, even if there is a shift that goes beyond minor. Are we incentivizing people to keep the old buildings as much as we should? Future conversation. Thank you.
Okay, just a few more slides.
Okay.
And we will, in the findings, facts and conclusions, or whatever it is, we will try to document the discussion. I will say, just to be super transparent, sometimes when you start relating things to the other plans and the rest, it can get very confusing with respect to funding. And so we'd still maybe, we'll try to address as closely as possible to really document, to support the questions, but it may not come back. There may not be a line in there saying that, oh, well, it's 100 million over 20 years. And okay, I'm just letting you know, because sometimes that information, it's very good in a discussion, but sometimes on the printed page, it may be taken out of context. So we'll do our best to, and I really like what you said, because my vision at first was, oh, yeah, 1, 2, check. But I think if we put this extra discussion, get the revenue, make sure you can do the projects and promote keeping and reusing old buildings and all these things. We can put that in, that just adds that extra element that I think everyone should hear. So we'll do that. I just might be a little higher level. Cool. So we have Title 17 updates we have to do at the same time. So part of this is right now we're on a corridor-based level of service. It's just how we measure how our transportation system runs. Now we're going to a multimodal level of service. We have a transportation impact fee schedule in Title 17, and we'll have to replace it with a new one. We're including process simplifications that we're actually still working on. So right now, our concurrency approach, which is concurrency is the way I like to see it is our thing is current with respect to the impacts. So when you talk about concurrency is are the impacts that are being generated being mitigated in or near the near term. And our process for that is very, very detailed. It's a little old-fashioned, and it doesn't really function well with the new multimodal level of service. So you'll see that our Title 17 concurrency process is simplified significantly. There are some minor housekeeping updates, such things as addressing homes and things like that. So I just wanted to, you haven't seen these, you're not being asked to look at these, but I wanted to explain what they were, so when you see them, you'll understand. So for next steps, findings, conclusions, and recommendations, we'll draft that up. I haven't spoken to Christian about this because I hadn't thought about it, but it sounds like we'll maybe have to bring that back at the next Planning Commission meeting, if that works. So he'll give me a heads up or no. We're bringing this forward to council on October 21st. We'll have a public hearing on November 18th. And then if all proceeds as planned, we'll come back to council in December for adoption January 1, 2026. So I think we've had input on these, and it sounds like it's unanimous support for the higher reduction for affordability and for the change in use impact fee exemption. Anything else for us today?
Thank you for bringing this to us.
That's awesome. And thank you for the good questions. This is great.
All right, look forward to seeing you back soon. All right, that concludes our study sessions for the evening. Next item is reports from members. Do we have anything for the group? Commissioner Westerbeck.
I don't know if it's a report, but just I will be absent at the October, I think it's 15th meeting. I know some folks up in Linwood, and the council asked me to be on a roundtable for small developers. So, just so you know where I'll be that night.
Well, good.
And I talked to Deputy Director Geitz about it, and it looks like it's mostly stuff we've already discussed. So it's public hearings on issues we've covered. So I'll miss that. I'll watch it later. And then I think the one study session, then I know it's in good hands with all y'all.
All right, anything else from commissioners? Seeing none, reports from staff.
Just the general update for next meeting on the 15th. So yeah, we have 3 study sessions on projects that we're looking to wrap up. We're planning on them being pretty brief as far as the materials from staff, so looking to kind of move through those. The question that I had sent out individually to commissioners, if you're available on the 22nd, so to provide us some time to work through the urban forestry management plan. We're doing an open house next week. We want to make sure we can consolidate all of that information and make sure we can incorporate all the comments from many staff contributors throughout parks, public works. So that ask was if there is availability, we'd consider a special meeting on the 22nd. I've heard back from a few of you and just want to make sure you can respond back to that email, and we'll go forward with that. Just didn't want to compress too much into the November meetings. So that's it.
We'll put that in as tentative until we hear further. All right. If that is it, there being no further business, is there a motion to adjourn?
Commissioner Westerbeck, motion to adjourn.
Second?
Everyone wants to stay?
Come on now.
Second.
All right, all in favor of adjourn?
Aye.
All right, the meeting is adjourned at 7:50 p.m. Our next meeting will be October 15. Thank you all for your participation. Good meeting. Thanks.
Thank you.